Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to all of you. I am Shrina, working with Design Skills Academy as the admission manager. I would like to welcome you all for today's session for the talk show. So before getting into this session, I would like you to take you through a small PPT about what we are into, Design Skills Academy. Yes. So as I told you, we are authorized World Skill Training Center. And once a student enrolled for degree, diploma, certification courses, any courses, we give the placement assistance. Also, we support them in the online training and other competitions. So this is our wonderful team. I would like to start with Mr. Satish Narayan. He is basically having more than 30 years of experience in the design field industry. He's a founder and the director of the Design Skill Academy. Also, he's a mentor, trainer for the World Skill Competition in the expert for graphic designing category. Along with so, we have Sridevi Satish, another director of the company, and these are the all another people and trainers from the industries. So it says that whenever you apply any creative field, when you want to go into any creative field or designing field, very important thing is you should focus on the right tool, right technology, and very importantly, a right place where you'll get knowledge and creativity and also the guidance. So we in the Design Skills Academy, we try to give the students overall in terms of creativity, practice, industry association, lot of live projects. So here we have multiple courses we have like into animation, communication design is nothing but graphic designing and web designing and UI UX. We have digital filmmaking and TV production. We have industrial design foundation course and we have visual effects. Also, we have a game design course, AR, VR course. As I told you, we have a 3 years BSc multimedia degree course with Yeshwantrao Chauhan University. It's a distance course. Along with that, we have 2 years advanced diploma program, 1 year, 6 months, and 30 months. Also, we have been an authorized center for media and entertainment skill council. So whoever students is enrolling, they are also getting a benefit that they will get a certificate from the skill in authorized media entertainment skill councils. So these are the industry association like MESC, Skill India, National Skill Development, Horseman FX is a studio of our Lakshya and Nectropixel. So this is another Design Skills Academy is also partnered with Jagran Lake University, which is in the Bhopal. They have offering a multiple courses in a bachelor in animation art and design, bachelor in visual effects, bachelor in digital filmmaking. It's a 4 years course, full-time course. Also, we have master in graduation in animation. Also, we have been partnered with VU Vishwakarma, and the same we also have 4 year BDS like in the animation and art and design, game art and design, also in visual effects, digital filmmaking, and masters in animation filmmaking. So this is one of the biggest achievement of Design Skills Academy that we got awards and recognition from the World Skill Olympic 2019, which is happening in Kazan, Russia. She is a winner. She's Shweta Ratanpure. She won a bronze medal for the country for the graphic designing category. These are some glimpse of pictures and of competitions in Russia. After achieving the bronze medal for the country, there we got multiple awards and we received awards and recognition from different platforms. So he is Mr. Arun Raj, another winner for 2013 World Skill International Competition, which is happened in Leipzig. This guy is Sriram Godaswamy. He's another winner for 2015 World Skill Competition, which is happened in Sao Paulo. And after that, many awards received from the government of India. You can see this, some of the pictures. We also received our award for Maharashtra Times Atulya Sanman Award by TOI, Times of India. These are another awards. We also received awards from by the international body by Germany, UAE, and Australia also. So we have multiple courses, as I already mentioned in the previous sale. So these are the admissions are open for animation, VFX, film, communication design, industrial design, gaming. So these are the contact number. These are the courses. So anyone would like to know about the course detail, admission process, and anything related to visit our institute or studio, they can call on this number. We can help you all. Thank you.
I'll request Satish sir, please can you switch on the camera and the
Yes, yeah. So very good evening to all of you, and a warm welcome from Design Skills Academy. And first of all, thank you so much for on a Saturday evening. I know most of you would like to take some rest actually, but you've joined quite a number. So I can see already around 70 plus people are there. And I formally welcome my old friend Zamir. Hi Zamir, how are you? You're muted, Zamir.
All right, the usual one. Thank you, Satish.
Yeah, great. How's your family? How are things?
All well. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. Zamir is connected from Chennai. Actually, he's the creative head of Bot VFX, one of the very well-known visual effects studio in India. Currently doing a large amount of Hollywood projects. And apart from that, me and Zamir, we have connection over 20 years now. When he was working with one of the company called initial, I would say, Hollywood studio from India, like Pentamedia Graphics. So we both started our career from that company. So Zamir was that time a compositing artist, and I was into 3D actually. So since then we've been in touch actually. So like his journey is throughout this visual effects industry, and in this 2 decades he has done some tremendous amount of work, whether it is on site or maybe on the studio. The kind of work which he has done for the domestic industry and the Hollywood industry is tremendous, and he has got immense knowledge. And in the visual effects industry, it's very difficult. You not only have to be a technical person, you need to be a creative person. That's when you can blend the live action plus the CGI, whatever we are doing. Seamless integration is what we would call it as the success of visual effects. Like perfect example is today, at least we have technologies like huge amount of technology where we can replace the reality. So I always used to quote this film called Titanic. So almost like 15-20 years before, if you see that kind of a film, which is nobody could even believe that it was a CGI. But today, it is completely CGI. But those days, people have, like when we were watching on the screen, so you don't even realize which one is computer graphics and which one is real. So that's the kind of a blend that film has had actually. And after that, over a period of years, the technology has grown tremendously, and we had a lot of advantages. And today, the human characters also, which we are doing, some of the films, they can even replace the real characters itself. So there are a lot of Hollywood films which you can see, you can't even figure out whether it is a real character or a CGI character. So that much technology has grown. So without wasting much of the time, so I would like to invite Zamir. Aditya, have you given screen sharing access to Zamir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So Zamir will take us through a small presentation which he has prepared, amazing presentation which he has prepared. And after that, we would like it to be more like a chat session actually. So Zamir, you can probably start from your own introduction and as well as what Bot VFX, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Satish. Yeah. Though we've been colleagues, 20 years back, I'm just left with a lot of gray, and you're still black. So that said, I'm Zamir, and currently I'm the creative head of Bot VFX and also VFX supervisor there. I think after the initial days with Penta, I think we've gone through many organizations, and I was associated with ILM. I was associated with another bigger organization called Double Negative, with MPC, with Method. So it's pretty much, I think, the spectrum is covered in terms of visual effects.
Correct. ILM Singapore, no, if I'm not wrong.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, and I think now, I'm creatively heading Bot here.
Since mostly the new students, they might not know what is ILM actually. Okay. So if you can just brief little bit of about ILM.
Right. So ILM is Industrial Light and Magic, and that's a company that was a zenith. Like whenever you join an industry, you'll always have a aim. Okay, I need to reach there, or I need to work there. That would always be an
Hello.
yeah. So
हाँ
ILM.
नीचे रखा हुआ है पैसा, उनको बोलो, उनको
I'll ask everyone to just mute.
सिक्योरिटी को फोन दो.
Aditya, you can mute everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone is on simultaneously. So
Yeah.
it's
So ILM was that kind of an organization. Then comes again the bigger organizations. I'll keep my presentation very simple. I mean, apart from the usual techie talks that we have every time, I understand that this is the crowd of aspiration, the people who would like to join VFX, and probably some of the people who've just enrolled into VFX. So I'm keeping it very simple, and I'll keep the questions for the last, and if you have any queries, do bring that out. So that's pretty much about me. And about bot, I think we are headed from Atlanta. Our registered office is in Atlanta, but in India, I think we have a team of around 400 now, 400 artists working for bot VFX. And our main focus have been all the support services, like all the support services required for the studios. It's a complete gamut. Like it starts from roto, paint, comp, CG, asset development, match move, rotomation, and whatnot. So it's got an entire spectrum that we are working on for bot. So, and the focus has been predominantly the Hollywood movies, the episodics, and some of the commercials till now. And we've been here in the industry for about 13 years now. And BOT is an organization which believes in people culture a lot. We treat or we respect people's culture, and we have a lot of other events that happens in BOT which really enhances the training for the students. So we believe that training is not anything that you need to get trained and you get into a job, but the training needs to be always ongoing. So you keep learning that every day. And every day in BOT starts off with a training session. We call it the BOT Gyan. So yeah, that's about BOT. Let me quickly run through the content for what we need to discuss today, which is of why VFX. There has always been many careers, right? So you're in a state where you could choose any better careers that really is good for you. But I see that many people choose this VFX. Excuse me if my eye contact is not there, because I'm looking at two monitors, one being the bigger one that I use, and another is a laptop. So usually many people prefer VFX because they might have an interest in storytelling, or probably they might have a interest to work with cutting edge technologies, or probably they might be creative, or they might be movie buffs who keep watching a lot of movies, or they would want to be surrounded by movie stars. Maybe when you go and film with them, probably you might want to be associated with them, or like you want to travel around the world, because working in VFX, the entire globe is a village. You can work anywhere at any given point of time. Or like probably I think you have a knack for building things, or you might be a hands-on person who wants to try those things by yourself. So there are many reasons why one could really use VFX. But I would say that please be clear about why and what you're choosing your career for. That is very instrumental in knowing yourself whether would you be able to fit into that respective role, or would you be able to really sustain that industry for a longer period of time, because every industry has its ups and downs. So unless you're very passionate about the work that you're doing, sustaining in that ups and downs might get a little difficult. And to start with, I would just want to, generally touch base on this aspect of skills. Many a times, our interpretation or probably our understanding of skills versus what the skills are really required is really different. Like it's between, hell and heaven. We always think that certain skills are really required and certain skills are not required. I would always want to put this into three major categories. One being the natural skills that that you have, right? And the next would be the adaptive skills, which you can really learn by any means. And the third would be the and the other would be the qualifying skills that is required to get into an industry, right? And most of the people always concentrate a lot on this qualifying skill. Qualifying skill is the most easiest thing you can do. It's hardly going for a course for about, say, 6 months, or a vocational training for about a year, learn the software application that you want to use, or in case if you really a person who wants to get into programming, probably learn the software language. So knowing the software application, knowing the software language is the most easiest thing you can do, and that hardly requires about, say, 6 months or probably a year at max. But what is really crucial is the natural and adaptive skills you really need to have. This is like a foundation. Unless you don't have this foundation, though you're well versed with the application that you're really using on, you would just be a button pusher, and there wouldn't be much growth beyond a certain threshold, right? Yes, you might you might get an entry into an industry, but after that it really gets difficult for you to really sustain there or probably move ahead there, unless you have these fundamentals very strong. And this is what has helped me all these years, and I just want to share that with you. So if you want to introspect yourself, and if you have an inclination to join the VFX industry, you will have to be sure whether are you a creative person. Like let us discuss the natural skills first. Like, are you the creative person? Where creativity is like, thinking anything hatke, right? Whatever that you do on your everyday things, whether are you really thinking that creatively? It can be anything, or probably when you're looking at a pencil or a pen, where you should just start thinking how this can be looked at in a different way, right? That's where the creativity really starts. The kind of whether are you really creative or not kind of feedback you should always get from from your peer group, or from your college students, or from your teachers. They will give you this sign and symptom that okay, you are creative, so they will give this result to you. So that is something that is really important. And you need to also be very sure whether you're a hands-on person, because learning something and trying that out by yourself is really a big deal, right? So to be into VFX, you should always be a hands-on person. You'll have to roll your sleeves, get into things and figure out what that is. And if you're that kind of a person who is really curious into knowing what is really required, how that thing really works, and if it is really working well, how could that be enhanced, or what is your way of looking at things? If you're a person who is good with all these natural skills, I think VFX should be a good entry point for you. Then definitely you'll have to be very clear whether are you really original. uh, this is again a very important skill, because in VFX, this originality really takes you to new heights. Yes, there are inspirations. You will have to get the inspirations from wherever that's possible, but you will have to ensure that the content that you're delivering, or the design that you're delivering, or the thing that you're really representing should be original and should not be really copied from anybody else. And the very important natural skill that you need to have is whether are you really adaptable. This is a quality that I don't see much, and this is a very rare quality. So yes, we might be good at something. We might be a hands-on person. We might be curious in whatever we are doing, certain things. But being adaptable to that required space, or being adaptable for that required situation, really needs a lot of maturity, self-maturity, self-introspection to really know. Yes, I can go fit there and make myself better. So that adaptability should always be your one of the very important natural skills. I have seen many people, at least from the time that I have come from the industry and the time that I've been here, many people have lost their race just because they were not adaptable. It's a one important skill that we need to be very sure that no, we have. Uh, I mean, these are like general things that is for all the industries, but I'm just keeping it pertaining to VFX.
Yeah, so very, very well said, Zamir, because me and my wife, we both come from fine arts background. And in our academy, we give utmost importance to these adaptability skills in terms of drawing, observation skills, sculpting, and all those things. But nowadays, the students are very much addicted to getting onto the software first, actually.
Right.
So when they see something happening on this Photoshop, when they see the result, they get carried away with that. They really don't want to improve these adaptability skills. That's where the biggest challenge is nowadays, actually. You
Yeah,
very well put. Yeah.
they call this the gym syndrome, right? So the minute you go and hit the gym, you will try all the instruments that is there in the gym, and the second day you would never go to the gym because of your body ache. So never
Correct.
have the gym syndrome. Yeah, the adaptive skills are something that you can really learn. It does not need a very structured methodology of learning. I mean, at least in this day and age with YouTube's all over, I think anything can be learned. These adaptive skills takes a longer time to learn, and these form the real cream of what you are. Like, if you really need to shine and get better with VFX, you will have to really have these adaptive skills, expertise on all these adaptive skills. One being the drawing, of course, the art and drawing. So drawing by itself is a science, right? So you need to know what is a perspective. You need to know what is a 1 point perspective, 2 point perspective, what is vanishing point, or even in terms of the scaling ratios, the global scale versus that scene scale, or even if you're a person who's a portrait sketch person, you need to know the ratios, like, okay, what is the unit of your head, and how much is your shoulder width versus your one head ratio. I don't know how many of you are art students, but all these are signs, right? The minute you put these signs into your drawing becomes good, right? Only if you know the science behind the drawing, you will really know, you will be able to say whether the drawing is good or not. Sometimes it so happens that, hey, you know what, the drawing looks good, but no, it's not believable, right? It's not happening. And to know why it's not happening, you need to know the skill, whether your perspective could be off, or probably the proportion could be off, or it could be anything. So unless you know what the science behind that art, the value for the drawing really doesn't really increase. So yeah, art and drawing is one of the important adaptive skills that you can learn. And this all just these adaptive skills comes only from practice. The more you practice, I think these adaptive skills, you can become an expert. The second important one is the real world observation. So this needs to be constantly there if you want to be VFX artist. Like even me, it is always like, even when I'm driving and when I see there is a rain, the raindrops that are stuck to my windscreen, I would always observe how the light distributes among itself, how the traffic light gets split into all those droplets. So this kind of real world scenario should always be there. Or for example, if you're looking at let's take, we are looking at Satish. We should exactly say which is the key light for Satish. From where is the light coming for Satish? Which is the shadow region? What is the highlight? So with these observation skills are always very useful for you to exactly know how do you really mimic that in your art form. Whether it could be a drawing, it could be a VFX, it could be sculpting, or whatever it is. This art form is, is very, very important. It could be anything. For an animator, the observation skills are very important, because let's take an animation skill. Animation skill is nothing but biped, right? You're making somebody walk. So this is a walk cycle, right? It's as simple as that. And same happens with your computer also. You would just take a rig and you will animate in such a way that it walks. But hear me out. Now think of a situation where you're making this walk cycle. Will the walk be same for a 5-year-old kid? Will the 5-year-old kid walk like this? Or think about say a 50-year-old person. Will he walk like this? There is a lot of difference between how a 5-year-old walks, how a 15-year-old person walks, how a person who is very hefty and very very fat really walks. What are the jiggles that happen when he walks? What are the things that shakes? Or for example, the difference between how is the walk cycle of a woman versus a man. And there are many observation skills. Like for example, take quadruped. All animals that you see on the road is all like 4 feet, right? It's just 4 legs. But the minute you animate, you will know whether are you animating a dog or are you animating a tiger, right? Everything has got 4 legs, but you exactly need to know how does a tiger walk, how does a lion walk, how does a dog walk, how does a donkey walk. Else, else whatever that you're animating is going to look gravely different. So these kind of observation skills are very important. Then comes the communication skill. Yes, I have seen many people lacking this one. When I mean communication, I don't mean the English language communication, though it also plays a part to some extent. Communication skills is the communication of the content, right? You might have something in your brain. You might have some creative thought in your brain. Are you able to communicate that to another person so that he understands, right? How do you communicate the content? That is very, 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 very important. Many people that I've seen have been excellent artists, but they have failed in this communication skill. So this is very important adaptive skill you need to know, like how are you really representing yourself, right? How are you selling yourself in the first place? Then comes the visual aesthetics. Yeah, I mean, coming from your background, this is very useful for these visual aesthetics. You need to know what is a golden ratio. You need to know what is rule of thirds. You need to know exactly what really makes you look good. See, Satish is looking really good because he's following the rule of thirds. He is in that one third, of the frame. He looks really good there. So these are very important design skills and visual aesthetics that you need to develop. This visual aesthetics is like how you serve it, right? Assume that you cook a beautiful biryani, right? You really love biryani, you cook a beautiful biryani. But if it is not presented in the way that anybody really likes it, what is the point of that biryani, right? So presenting it in the best visual form is very important. Then comes the photography. With all these visual aesthetics that you're really doing, you'll have to put that into practice with photography. So that is something that is very crucial. Photography is also crucial for many other aspects in visual effects, like in terms of texture and other things. But this is a very basic thing that you need to learn. Then comes the sculpture and anatomy. Yes, yes, I told you hands-on person. So you will have to be a person to really mold things. It can be anything. It can be just with a wire. You'll have to bend and make it like a human form, right? There is this wire art, or there is pottery. There is. I mean, there is enough amount of what do you say? Studies that you can do for sculpture. Sculpture does not mean just the wooden sculpture. It is any form. You are creating a form from an object, right? Even with a thermocol carving, you get a form. So that is again a sculpture. Sculptural anatomy is very crucial for a VFX artist because that is what really makes things real. Then comes the composition and light. Yes, this is very crucial. As I told you a few minutes back, you'll have to observe on how the light really falls on you. Like how is the shadow? When you observe, you will know that the shadow. There's two different types of shadow. One is the contact shadow where you're really standing at the connect place between you and the ground. Another is the cast shadow, the shadow that is casted on the ground, right? You'll have to observe how the shadow really happens by 9 o'clock, by 12 o'clock, by 3 o'clock, and you need to know how sharper the shadow is near your feet, and when it goes towards the further, how it really gets dissipated, how it gets defocused or blurred, and these are like real world observation that needs to happen for the light, for the composition, and how does the light really bounce back. See, all that we are seeing is not a light, right? All that we are seeing is just a bounce light, right? The light falls on me, but only blue color bounces off of my shirt, which is why you see blue. So you'll have to know, like, for example, when I'm taking my hand near my face, you can see that the light falls here and again bounces back on my chin. So you'll have to start. This study is really important on composition and light. I'm not diving too deep into it, but then I'm just giving you the points. Then comes the mechanics and movement. Yes, maybe if you really want to put your hands on animation, this is very important. You always have that toy, right, by which you can learn movements. So this mechanical and movement is very crucial. You need to know how everything works. This becomes very important when you need to become a rigger, when you need to become an animator, because many things are done by driven and driving ratios. Say for example, you'll have to animate a car. So to animate a car, what you'll have to do is just say a car is in one corner of the frame here, and then you're moving the car till the other edge of the frame, which is here. All that you need to do is translate that on X, right? On X, say from minus 100 pixel to forward 100 pixels, you'll have to make the car move. But will that look real? That won't look real, because when you'll have to start driving, like when I do this, what needs to happen? When I do that, what needs to happen? My action should drive another action. That action should drive another action. That action should drive another action. For example, like we could take the same car. If you're moving the car on X, you'll have to ensure that you're also rotating the wheel of the car, right? If my car is moving by about 10 pixels on X, then my wheel should rotate about, say, whatever, 10 degrees or 20 degrees, depending on how speed you want the car to be. And while you're doing this, you'll also have to move your steering. There are many things that needs to keep, being driven one after the other. So these mechanics and movements are really important, when it comes to visual effects. Then comes the qualifying skill. I don't really need to say much on that qualifying skill. It's as simple as that. If you're having these natural skills and if you really put in your time and energy in learning all these adaptive skills, qualifying skills is just the door, right? It's just a door key, right? But then you need to have all these things before you really put the door key and go into a door or go into an industry. And that's as simple as that. You learn a software application or you learn a software programming language that you really want to and get into an industry. I will just quickly run through what is crucial for VFX. It might look a little wonky, but again, this is basics of a VFX pipeline. So how the work comes into the industry or into the studio, how the work gets done in the studio, and how the work goes out of the studio. So this picture gives you a clear idea of how the works happen and how many people really contribute to make it look good, or how many people form as a team to get the project done or get the movie done. So these are important traditional skill sets that you need to really have. Let me quickly dive into the next one. So for all these aspects, not that you need to have one skill. There is a lot of other skills that are required to be a part of the VFX industry. Like for example, it can start with, I'll even go to the previous slide. You can see that there are departments like production management, there is departments like CG, there's departments like compositing, there is something on the filming side, there's something on the technical side, and there's something on the pre-production, post-production. There are a lot of departments are at play when you need to know what is happening inside VFX. And all these departments have people with certain niche skills who contribute to whatever is required in the pipeline of VFX. So this VFX pipeline really encompasses people with a wide variety of skills. If you're creative, yes, you can really do a great job. If you're analytical, and if you're good with numbers, yes, you have a job there. If you are a person who is very technically sound, yes, you have a job there. If you are a person who is very good with filming, yes, you have a job there. If you are a person who is very good with art and sketches, yes, you have a job there. What is really required is you need to have your own niche skill to be a part of the industry. Like for example, of that, one important department is pre-production. Let me not get too much details into that, but basically pre-production is a department which actually is the starter of the pipeline, right? So whenever the producer gives a task saying that, okay, I need the task to be done, then you sit with the director, talk to him, understand what is really required for that respective shot or the sequence, and then you give a small sketch. You conceive an idea, and then you do a artwork, which is called as the concept art, right? It can be concept art, could be for, like, for example, thing that the director wants to make a huge mahal, right, or a big valley with a very or even like a space like with the Pandora Mountains, where all the mountains are floating. So that is an idea. A concept artist really puts this idea into drawing, into concepts, and tries to sell this idea to the director to say, yeah, is this what you really thought of? And then this concept artist would give a lot of iterations, would give a lot of options to choose which is really good. And then the director would choose something which he really likes, and then things would proceed from there. This concept artist really forms the first part of the chain, or first part of the VFX pipe. Then the next one is the previous artist. So he takes these concepts and creates the entire movie that the director really wants in terms of still frames, right? He keeps these as quick drawings that he can really annotate, or quick sketches, and he will make the form of a story as text into a pictorial form. So you call him as a previous artist. Of course, previous itself is a big, is a big industry. There are a lot of things, and there is something called cinematics. There is something called animatics. There's a lot of detail that goes into it. But then let's keep it simple for now. And for all these things, you definitely need to have the very core art skill and visualization skill. Unless you have this, you will not be able to be a good concept artist or a previous artist. Then if you're really creative and technical, there are two important departments that you can really go. One being the CG department, another is the compositing department. So CG department is where all the cooking happens, all the making happens. You have many people who are associated with that. Like you have a CG supervisor who heads that entire department, who takes care of all his niche departments. So you have somebody called look development artist, you have someone called modeling artist, then you have animator, texturing artist, environment artist, layout artist, lighting artist, match move. There are a few more like rendering artists, there are render anglers, there are many more. But then these are very key skill, and everybody has got his own skills that he brings to the table. If you're a CG supervisor, you'll have to be an expert with all these skills. So that is like one unit that really represents everything. You need to be a bit of everybody. You need to be a jack of all to be a CG supervisor. Look development artist is a person who really drives the look, what is really required. Assume that the director wants an alien, and then this look development artist would really, from the concept artist, he'll get the drawing of how the alien should be. He makes the alien, he makes the alien sit in different environments. He makes the alien sit in a daylight. He makes the alien sit in a in a night. He makes him sit among the trees. So he creates different environments for all these alien to derive the look, how the look of that alien really needs to be. So this look development artist is a very crucial person. It's not just for the character, it's for the environment also, or it's also for the look of an effect. Like for example, if there needs to be an explosion, how that explosion needs to happen is all driven from this look development artist. Then you have a modeler, very a person who really works with the graphics side of what the VFX is. So he's a person who uses a good 3D application to sculpt whatever is necessary. If you need to make a 3D object, like assume that you need to make a dinosaur, so you're making a 3D dinosaur. So this person pulls and pushes the vertex, just like how you do a clay modeling to make a good model. Let's take dinosaur here. And then comes the animator. So animator is a person who really makes all those things walk or move, animates. So, and to do all these animation, there are a lot of principles that you need to follow. There is a lot of essence that you need to follow into really getting that thing done. Then comes texturing artist. Texturing artist is a person who really gives the skin to it, right? Everything is just like a grayscale model inside a computer. But this texturing artist needs to be a person who is very good with materials, who is very good with shading, who knows exactly what is the kind of skin that needs to be there. So yeah, then comes the environment artist. Again, you also call them as a matte painting artist or a DMP artist. So this person really creates all the environment that's required for that scene to happen. Then it's a layout artist who really takes all different things. Like for example, there could be a creation of a mountain. There could be a creation of a huge palace. There could be a creation of another huge pond. He brings all of them together and makes a layout. So that's the person called layout artist. Then you have lighting artist who just uses relights everything inside the computer. Lights it up to make it look as real as possible. Then you have the match move artist who really uses the existing data that you have from your footage, tries to match that data or tries to get the information from that data so that you can match the CG to that data. Then comes the compositing department, where there are many people associated with it, but main being the roto artists and the prep artists. Roto artists are the people who are really doing the cutout, right? They cut out each and every frame so that from one frame it can be cut out, taken and pasted on another frame. Like if you want to make a dual versions of the same character, you will have to cut them out, spline it up, and put it into another one. So that's roto artists. Prep artists are anybody, artists who are able to do any cleanups. Like for example, whenever you are filming, you will have a boom mic on top. Like for example, there'll be a mic that is coming on top, which you need to clean up. Or probably like when you are shooting, there might be something else that is coming behind that you really don't want in the frame. So editing the frame, removing anything that is not required in the frame and adding anything that is required in the frame is done by the prep artist. Then comes the compositor who is supposed to be uh, the person who is finishing the shot or finishing the task. So he gets everything together. Say CG department really cooks everything, and compositor takes that, makes it really look real, and presents it to the director. That's what the compositor does. And of course, you have a compositing supervisor who heads the department, who needs to know quite a bit of expert knowledge on all these spectrum. And if you're very good with analytical and if you're very good with the data and you still are creative, right? You can fit into roles like VFX producer, production manager, production coordinator, VFX editor, data, IO person. You call that input and output data management people. Then you have a person called as the runner. So there are many more roles that you can really take up, provided you are creative, but you are very good with analytical and data, because these are the people who really form the budget of the show or budget of the shot. So they exactly need to know how much time that it would take to really do that shot, and they keep the time, they keep the bidding done, so that the money and everything happens with these people, the producers and the production manager. And if you're creative and still you're good with coding, you're good with simulation, and if you're good with software development, then you can choose the technical department. Technical department is a huge array. You can become a pipeline TD. So pipeline TD is something a very sought after job of late. So pipeline TD is a person who really gives you the hard shell, or gives you the process at which everybody needs to work on. What does a modeler do? From modeling, how does it go to the animator? From animator, how does it go to the texturing artist? From the texturing artist, how does it go to the next person in the pipe? From to the lighter, then from the lighter, how does it go to the compositing artist? So pipeline TD or the pipeline person exactly knows how the information should flow, how the data should flow, how the shot should flow from the start, during the execution and during the output. So how does the information really flow is directed by this person called the pipeline TD. Then you have a person called as the rigging TD. Again, a very, very core technical skill that's required. So rigger is a person who really, takes the model and keeps the skeleton inside the model and gives the ranges to it, right? For example, assume that you've modeled a human being, right? And then this rigger, what he does is he creates a skeleton inside that model and says, okay, that's the bone. He creates all these bone and joint structures. Let's take, for an example, let's take this elbow bone. So he goes and says that, okay, inside that human model, there is a bone and joint that connects from my spinal cord to this shoulder bone, and from the shoulder bone there is a connection to the elbow, and from the elbow there is a connection to the wrist. So he also does all these connections, and also he says the ranges, like that joint should only move so much. Like for example, take our elbow joint. How much does it move? Okay, so this is 180 and this is 90, and probably it goes a little bit more for me, right? Say let's take probably this goes about say 70 degrees at max, right? So he has to clearly say that the joint can only go 70 degrees. Think of a situation where I don't give this threshold. I don't say that it has to move 70 degrees. Then it will start going on the reverse side, right? It's going to look really wonky. So this person really gives all those thresholds. Then you have a creature TD person who says how a cloth should move. Like when somebody is running, how the cloth should move, how the hair should move, and all these simulations are done by the creature team. Then you have the FX person who really is good with demolitions, explosions, again simulations, making fires, making water, making anything that's related to dynamics. Then you have a software developer, which is very crucial, because for doing all these things, you should always be developing tools internally. It's not that you can buy the tools. Sometimes you might need to do an effect, but then you might not have that tool set available. You'll have to make your own tool. So there would always be a person or a group of people, or software developers in the R&D department, who will start innovating every time into making tools, either to make tools which are already there to make it more simple and more effective, or to develop and innovate new set of tools. Then if you're very good with the filming skills, or if you're good with the camera, you really know how to how to shoot with the different lenses, and you're also very good with client relations, then of course you can be a VFX supervisor who really is a captain of the ship, who goes and shoots things on the ground and gets that back to the studio, gets everything done, and again presents to the clients to get the to finish of the show. Then another one is the entry level job, which is the data capture technician. So whenever a VFX supervisor goes to the shoot, he takes people, a set of people, like data capture technicians, because whenever you shoot, you need to record a lot of data. You need to record the existing lighting data. You need to record the existing moving data there. You need to exactly record the distance. You need to record the track information. You need to record the camera information, at what angle the camera is, what height it is, whether does it have a dent, does that not have a dent, what is the camera what is the lens that is being used, whether it's spherical, anamorphic, blah blah blah. There's a lot of things that these data capture technicians do. Right. So these are I'm just giving you very crucial important skills alone. So these are very important skills. So for all these things, you need to be creative, and you need to have all these skills to be to get an entry into all those jobs. Then comes the new age now, because with the traditional mode of whatever I've been saying, there is always a trend that has begun now, because there is a new age virtual production that has come into play, because many things is different from what we've been doing 10 years back or 5 years back. Things have really changed of late with this virtual production. And I'm sure you have seen tons and tons of videos available on YouTube on what is virtual production. But virtual production is anything that is going to reverse, right? Earlier, what happens is you have an idea, you sketch an idea, then you shoot that idea, you do the post production, then you do the post production, you give it out. But in virtual filming, it doesn't happen like that. You'll have to do first the planning, then you'll have to do the post production work. Only after that, the production work is the last entity in the pipe. So it's total reversal of the pipeline. It's a new age thing that we all need to learn, and this lands a lot to the technicalities that you need to be. And this also makes you be a person who is very good with technical and creative knowledge. And there are many roles in virtual production. The virtual and remote executions. Again, this is a new trend that's happening. Earlier, there was always like, you all group together as a team in one place, you brainstorm and get the work done. But now it's not the case. Now everybody sits, at every corner of the planet and gets the work done through a lot of, tools that is available. Just like how we are talking now on this call. So it's not only the communication that happens virtually, even the execution that happens virtually. But now with this COVID situation, this has really got a huge benefit to this industry, because earlier it was always treated that VFX is something that cannot go virtual mode or cannot go into working as remote. Now you can see every studio in the world works on remote mechanisms. There are softwares, and there are many other technicalities by which you connect your client system to the host system that is in the office and get the work done seamlessly. Then in this new day and age, there is a huge rise of technology and tools. Again, the next point is again related to that. Now, what you really need is for whatever you're doing, apart from being a creative person, you are also doing a lot of technical things. But at least a good 50 to 60% of this technical load is now automated with all these, real time, funda that is going on. Everything is real time. You light up real time, you shade real time, even the renders are real time. You don't need to wait for renders. I still remember, the times that myself and Satish started the industry industry. There are certain frames which will render for about 2 days and 3 days. You just wait for one frame to get rendered for 2 to 3 days. But now you can finish off the movie in that time. So that's the kind of real-time engines that has been developed and it's going on now. Then again, for the kind of skill that you need to adapt to, earlier there was always this niche skill. You will have to be an expert with one important skill. That was treated as high regard and they were always valued so much. But now again, a reversal of trend has happened. Now you will have to be a generalist for really to be more saleable. If you're a person who is very niche, that doesn't really work. You will have to be a jack of all again to really get into the industry and to sustain into the industry. Because now lot of the niche works are being taken over by the machines. All that you need to be is very creative, and you need to be a jack of all to know exactly how to get your work done with those tool sets that you have. The last important point is that how has VFX been? VFX has always been ups and downs for at least the last 10 years. But since the last 10 years, it has been all the more productive. At least, the estimates is that the VFX industry in India was somewhere around, say, 60 billion. But now it is set to move to 130 billion in the next 2-3 years. So that is the kind of pace at which the VFX is growing. Because earlier VFX was very much to the films. Now VFX is into films, is into television, is into episodics, is into all the OTT platforms. You have a lot of platforms for the utilization of VFX, and it's really a very good trend, and there is really a high demand for people who are really skilled. But are you skilled is something that you need to introspect yourself. Let me stop with that, Satish.
That was really an amazing presentation, Zamir, actually. So it is very well put on. Now I am sure like most of the students and then aspiring VFX artists would have realized how much importance other than the software skills, what are the other things which they have to learn. And like you've rightly mentioned, so those days we used to struggle to even render a frame, but the large amount of people had the conceptual understanding. But now the technology is ruling over, so people really don't work upon their foundation or maybe the fundamentals, the conceptual aspects of it. So those days when we started learning, so there was hardly YouTube or maybe internet where we can actually go and search for some details. But today everything is available on their fingertips. In their phone, they just immediately go to the references. But that should really help in terms of their growth. But somewhat I don't really see it is helping because they're getting carried away actually. So it's pretty much important. Whatever the aspects which you have said is really important, which they should focus on. So I'm really looking forward for some good questions.
While the questions are coming, let me try to play a quick, reel of what we've been doing in 2020. Sorry.
Great. Yeah.
Is the audio working?
No. While you are sharing, there is an option. You have to click both the option on the Zoom, so that the audio also will play. So you have to share again.
Wait a minute.
So while sharing at the bottom, you will see.
Yeah. I've made as share sound. Let me see again.
No, you have to again share. Your screen is visible, but you have to get out and share again. Now you play. Now it's visible. Great. So I
Thank you.
can see a lot of TV series currently in Netflix. Those series were going on actually.
Yeah,
So now this OTT platform has really opened up the way, I think.
sure. Yeah, I'm open to questions if you have any.
Yeah. Guys,
Uh,
yes.
You can keep a you can ask your questions on the chat box also if you feel.
So I have a question. So how do you prioritize the multiple projects going on floor actually? Because I'm sure like companies like Bot and many other companies like Technicolor and Dlex, and they're all working on multiple projects actually. So how do you prioritize these multiple projects and how do you meet these deadlines? It's really pressure which you have to handle actually as a creative head.
Yeah, yeah. As a creative head, there is always four pressures on me. One is to make the director happy with giving the best of the work,
Correct.
and then make the producer happy, giving the best of the money for the work that you are doing. Then
Correct.
you'll also have to satisfy your team to really have a very interesting work done with and then lastly also management, which you need to really please them to keep this
Correct.
cycle on the most efficient mode. So yeah, at any given point of time, there is at least about say roughly about 45 to 60 projects that would be on the floor, and it's really there are projects which is like one day. There are projects which could be a week old. There
Week
could be
old.
projects which are like 3 months.
3
So
months.
all
Correct.
these things, there is a huge dynamics at play. So we really have certain forecasting system and certain allocation system that we really have to get the best of the time that we can have for every artist, and the way that we keep those predictions that happens for the project and the utilization of the artist, and there are a lot of other metrics also that we follow so that it is kept in the most sanity mode as much as possible. That being said, it's always back to that four quadrant theory of knowing exactly what is important and what is urgent, what is important but not urgent, what is urgent but not important. Then the fourth quadrant being what is not important and not urgent.
Not urgent.
Prioritize accordingly.
Okay. While you're explaining itself is too confusing. I know while handling it is even more actually. Another question, like right now, because of this pandemic, the whole of IT industry is working culture have changed actually. So they are going completely on offline mode. And even if the situation returns to the normal mode, most of the IT companies have given up their space, 1/3 of their space. Actually, they really wanted to have a weekly 2 system, 3 systems. They can work from home kind. So do you really see this kind of a culture happening in our industry? I'm sure Bot is one big company where like for the past 1.5 year, most of our artists are working on like remote. But having challenges, it's unlike IT industry where they require very limited bandwidth actually. But for us, it's a very huge heavy files actually. So one file we talk about like 4 MB, 5 MB. So it is going to be really difficult for them to work remote. How did you manage this, and is it still working? Is there any problems in the like production or the delivery system? So is it going to, this trend is going to continue?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when this lockdown was in place, it was really a surprise. We were already doing, or we were utilizing a technology called PC over IP for a very very niche, thing, just talking between our branches.
Correct.
But when the lockdown happened, we were quickly able to take this technology and go the full form. As much as what the other things were developing, this streaming technology was developing at a very high pace, and at least in the last 1 year, streaming technology has gone a very very high pace where you're able to take that. I totally agree. I mean, I must say that there are five. Even if we are working on one of the projects here. One file is about 80 MB.
Oh my God.
Just a frame.
Just a frame.
That's the kind of data that you're doing. But
correct.
But what is happening is via a streaming technology called PC over IP. So the entire data doesn't get passed. So whatever is being captured in the monitor gets passed. So the data is always, the data is always same, and that doesn't really fluctuate so much. But there are other parameters like how good is your bandwidth, office bandwidth where all the systems get connected, and how good is your home bandwidth from where you're really accessing. They need to be at a moderate level. I would say at least if you're having a decent 50 Mbps connection with you, you will be able to do a very seamless work. And in terms of trend, Satish, I must say that yes, this industry is one which is really changed upside down after the lockdown.
Correct.
So now people prefer to have it more as a hybrid model of working, where a very fixed ratio of people will be at the office to manage things that is really required, and at least a good 50 to 60% will be still on the remote, but more as a pod system where it's not remote from homes everywhere. Probably there might be like a pod system in every city. Like Mumbai could have a place where 10 people can join and get connected to Chennai, or
Okay.
Pune could be a place they could get connected to Chennai. So it will be
Chennai.
more like a pod system of working, and that is what every studio is going towards.
Great. So
So
this gives us a lot of opportunity in opening up the avenues, I think. So
that's correct.
yeah. So another, because I always used to try to compare with IT industry and our industry. See, in IT industry, you really don't require the color calibration and all those things. But in our industry, barring like Roto, you don't really look at the colors and all. But when a compositor, his monitor needs to be calibrated. Otherwise, the whole thing can go for a toss actually. So whatever he's doing. So that part, how are you handling? Are they really able to? So you are providing them the monitor, or what? If
Yeah, I mean, all the infrastructure is like for all the artists, all the 400 artists, the infrastructure was all supplied by the organization so that they will be able to do. And some people prefer to do it even via laptop.
okay.
Yeah, the color was very important thing, because when the streaming technology came into existence, there was a lot of issue with the color. It was always having a false color. It was not
Correct.
really giving the exact color.
Correct.
The improvements really happened at that stage, and there are a few hiccups where we face a lot of pixelation. Say, for example, the playback needs to happen on real time, even if it's a 4K image, it has to happen real time. But that could always have a pixelation depending on the bandwidth and other things. But streaming technology has now got the color system sorted. Earlier it was a problem, but now the color system has been sorted. In terms of the resolution, is something that we are fighting with, because the streaming that is there now, yes, the 4K streaming is going to happen now, but I think most of the work that is happening now is still on the HD streaming. So whatever you were looking at earlier as a 4K, you're still looking through a HD file, right? You're still getting a smaller version of it. So that is something that is a compromise that we had to take a hit because of this. But quickly the streaming technology is getting adapted to 4K, and in a matter of months it should be reversed to that.
Okay, great. We have few questions in the chat box. There is Advait Chaugale. He is asking, sir, you have the necessary skills to make VFX of Hollywood level, but what is keeping us behind from making this in India? Is it a budget problem or something more?
I must say that at least putting all the outsourced studios in India, I can confidently say that at least a good I would say 60% of the work for Hollywood studios is happening in India. So there is no difference. It's about where are you doing to make a movie look good. I mean, all the movie that you see, all the name it, all the movie that is being in the Hollywood is done predominantly by everyone here in India. So the work remains the same only. But it's about it's not just about the work. It's about what is the art form that the director is really looking at, and what is the time duration that he gives, and how much of all these aesthetics that he brings into the table. I do remember when during my early days, we were working under supervisors where they were just shooting whatever that comes our way and getting things into the studio, only to realize that how can you really work with that.
Correct.
So it's not just the execution part. It's about how do you conceive the idea, how do you shoot the idea, and then how do you execute the idea, and how do you make it more presentable. So it's a cycle. So even if one jigsaw puzzle, it's more like a jigsaw puzzle. Even if one thing breaks out, the cycle doesn't get continued. So, but I do see that there is not dearth of the artists here, because all the work is done in Hollywood only. I mean, Hollywood movies are done here. So there is no dearth of the artist. There is no dearth of the skill. It is only the dearth of the platform to which you're really working at.
Correct, correct. Yeah, just to add what Zamir said, like almost like 60% of the studios in India. So when I'm talking about 60% studio, these are studios, subsidy studios of Hollywood studios like Deluxe and maybe Bot. Bot is not a subsidy studio; it's an Indian person owns, but mostly they do only Hollywood projects like Technicolor. So these are the companies, they are doing predominantly these Hollywood films. That includes Avatar, not Avatar, sorry, Avengers. Most of the work is done here actually. So like these kind of high-end skilled works are happening in India. The problem, when you ask for is there any other problem, it is more of the storytelling aspects of it, because those Hollywood companies have global audience to tell a story actually, and they have large amount of superheroes, right, from like DC Comics or maybe like other comics actually. So they are keep on making it. So for us, India, we still we made some of the fantastic films like Bahubali and Robo. So these are all high budget films. The storytelling is slightly changing. So because of this lockdown, the film industry is also affected for the past 2 years. Otherwise, there are films going on like Maniratnam is making one film actually, one of the historical film that's around 1,500 crores budget. So these are kind of films also happening in India. So these people who are working for Hollywood films, so they are capable of delivering Hollywood standards output, but it depends on, like Zamir said, the platform actually. If an Indian producer want to tell a story for a global audience, we have the talent, we have the skill set, and we have the infrastructure as well actually. We can easily tell. There is no problem actually.
Also to add, Satish, it's about it's about also what is that VFX that we're looking at. I remember one of the first projects as a VFX soup, I think in probably 2001 or something, 2001 2002. It was even a regional movie called Anveshiyam. It was Kamal Hassan's movie. So all the rain, the movie had at least 50% of the shots during the rainy season. All the rain was digital. Nobody even knew.
Correct.
So yeah, it's about what is VFX. As long as it is subtle, you're not going to notice at all.
Correct.
So and if you want it to be flashy, then yeah, that's a separate question. But there has been fantastic work even done on the regional movie side of things. Not that cliche VFX. There has been very subtle VFX, which even makes your head scratch. Okay, how did they do it?
Yeah. Great. There's one more question. Rishikesh is asking, like, how's opportunities to VFX artists and how's the scope?
Yeah, this is a very good question. This is what I've been telling all my students as well all the while. There is nothing called scope except the cinema scope that you see in the movie. There is no scope. Scope does not matter as long as do you have it in you really matters, right? There has been many, like for example, there would be a scope called, okay, Java developers have a good scope. Then in a matter of a year, you will have every Java developer sitting idle because the scope would have gotten in. So it is not about the scope. There is always a scope. I would always say that if you are a good, if you are a person who's a good electrician, if you are able to wire things beautifully, you are always valued. If you are a good cobbler and nobody is able to do or make shoes like you always have a value. Whatever you do you have the scope in you is more important than whether the industry has a scope. If you know that you have the scope to really sustain to whatever the demands are, and if you feel that you're creative, if you feel that you're original, then you're unshakable. Why do you even need to worry about the scope? So like when I started VFX, hardly people knew about VFX. And at least the people who have started VFX, I assume that there are about, say, Pentamedia was a studio with 4,000 people, but I would say not even more than 10 people are still in the industry. So it's never about the scope. It's about what you are and who you are. So scope will always be changing, right? Not relevant to VFX, anything for that matter. But are you passionate about what you're doing, and are you really enjoying what you're doing, and have you introspected that whatever be the case, I'm going to cling on to this, then you will have a good scope.
Great, thank you. So well answered. One more question which I have personally, like in the only difference I see, like you said, the output we are still capable of delivering. Almost 7-8 years ago, so India is considered to be more of a roto and paint kind of work used to be sent to India. But now we are doing a lot of value addition, CGI creation, match move, rotomation, all these work is also doing. So anything we are there to do. One area which we really have to improve the skills, that is one, the effects. We have very less amount of artists across India. So the effects part of it. Another one is the actual industry. So are they still considering the visual effects supervisors right from the ideation stage? Because that's one big difference I always used to feel. Like in Hollywood, actually, if you see, like if they are thinking about a visual effects movie, so right from the day one, the storytelling discussion aspects, they involve the VFX artist and they respect him and give all sort of freedom for him to express his ideas and opinion. But in India, that part was lagging actually, as far as my knowledge is concerned. So how is it changed now, and it's still the same kind of problem persists?
No, it depends on the kind of project, but at least I would say from the mid tier to the higher tier, it has changed.
Okay.
From the mid tier movie to the higher tier movie, they do engage on a VFX supervisor, but from mid tier to the lower tier, they don't engage on. So at least this awareness has really come into exactly knowing that you need a person to direct them.
Correct.
Say, for example, if a supervisor would exactly know what is the distance at which a blue screen needs to be kept between the subject and the blue screen, and how not to have any spill that is falling on him. There are many things a VFX supervisor would really know, and he will come up with the most optimized way to get the work done. So this awareness is now spreading, and I think earlier it was happening in very niche one or two projects, but now it has trickled down till the mid-tier kind of projects.
Okay. So what is your advice for somebody who really wants to specialize on on-site supervising, actually he wants to become a visual effects supervisor, but he doesn't want to spend much of a time in like doing all these roto, paint, comp and all those things. But is it possible?
No, see, it's as good as like asking, you want to become a car mechanic, but I wouldn't really use a screwdriver and cutting pliers.
Yeah, correct. So many people get fascinated about VFX. If I want to become a VFX supervisor, that's what is there.
That's always the case. I've seen this. Many people coming out of the colleges, like they always come out with the hand like this, thinking that they are the directors. That is not the case. So you need to put in the time. So that's what I always say, that to get an engineering job, you put your school education, 5 years of your college education, then you become an engineer or a doctor, right? So that is a skill that you develop. But for animation alone, you think that everything could happen just within a shorter time. Shorter time, you can learn the application, you can learn the software, language. But then, as I told you, you need to put a lot of adaptive skill. That requires a lot of what do you say, gestation time for you to really succeed. So to become a VFX supervisor, you really can't become a supervisor directly. Correct. You will have to be a person who knows everything that is happening in the pipe. Like as a supervisor, for example, assume that I have a shot where there is an explosion, and I find that the explosion is not as per what the client had really asked. Now I need to communicate that to my effects artist and say that no, this feels like a diesel smoke, but there should not be smoke. There should be more of fire and whatnot. And if he says that I'm not able to do, you should be able to do that. Then who else is going to do, right? You have an artist who will be able to do, and he says that you don't, no, I'm really not aware of that. You should be the person who is able to fix that and get it to the director. So a VFX supervisor is actually the captain of the ship. He needs to know everything, and he needs to be a hands-on person who will be able to switch to any role, get the work done, and and get the delivery happening.
Correct, great. There's a question from Ashish. Zamir sir, what are some of the biggest problems you have encountered, and how did you handle them as an artist?
Yeah, there has always been huge problems that you need to encounter. But see, the problems are always a learning mechanisms, right? A learning scope. Unless there is a problem, there is never learning there. I still remember, since you had mentioned as an artist, I remember. During Penta, Satish, there was one earlier days. There was a tool called Matador. I hope you know that, right? So where you need to paint
Illusion and Matador. These are the two software.
I'm saying 90s. Yeah. So that was not a vector software like how you are using. Correct. So the minute you put a paint stroke, it ends. That's it. You cannot do anything with that paint stroke again. So that's like a hardcore painting tool. So I remember that. it takes a lot of time to do the paint work and everything. So I spent about one full Saturday to do the painting. It was a very urgent work. The director was sitting in the reception, and the producer was sitting in the reception. My boss called me because I was the only guy who was free at that time. So I had to do that for the entire full day. But then my friend was buzzing me because he had booked a movie for me, and the cinema time was happening, and he was buzzing me, every time, and I couldn't even answer him. And I was really pissed off with this because I wanted to get the work done. I need to go to the movie as well. And what was happening in that software is that the export tool and the delete button, the export and the delete button were just very nearby, right? It didn't have much gap in it. So out of the hurry, instead of export, so
You
export what it
deleted
does
it.
is all the painting that you've done for one full day, it accumulates, it exports it, right? It saves it. Now you can save anytime. The auto save is there. Those times it was not there. So instead of clicking on that export tool, I clicked on the delete tool.
Okay.
That's it. One day of work got, and my supervisor really became, so flushed. And then that was a learning that, I had to be careful. Not just that. There has always been, difficulties in terms of knowing what you need to learn and knowing what is the trend that is happening and how much you need to be at pace with the trend. So what I told you earlier was an artist, but the minute you become supervisor, the minute you become the lead of a department, you need to know what is a trend. You need to know what is a tool that is coming up. You need to know what is the discussion that is happening in the forums and how good are you at that level. I remember at the earlier stage when Nuke was not there, it was only, as rightly mentioned by Satish, it was Illusion. So I was on
Yeah.
Illusion. Then I had to upgrade with self-learning with another software called Shake. So
Hmm.
after Shake, then I had to do a lot of coding practice and everything. Then I jumped on to Nuke. So at
No,
that
after
point,
I think after Shake, this combustion was the compositing.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
went into two streams. So
yeah, yeah.
combustion went into the layer form, and this was the tree structure.
Please,
So
yeah,
hardly at that time there were only about, say, handful of people who knew Nuke in India,
correct.
which is why when ILM wanted to start the Singapore office, they wanted somebody who is very proficient with Nuke, which is why I was able to be there. So knowing exactly what is the trend, what is really coming up, and you being prepared for it takes a good amount of learning, being exposed, keeping your antennas open to know what is happening in the industry. So there is always a problem. You might end up learning something and only to figure out that, oh no, that's not really useful. So knowing exactly what you need to learn itself is a problem, and you need to face that on a regular basis.
Great. So one more question from Agastya Patel. Can a person work in two different departments like CG and technical specifically if the person wants to be CG generalist and FXTD? Is that possible?
It is possible, very much possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, as I told you, the rise of generalism or
Yeah,
the rise
it
of
is.
generalist is happening. So
Correct.
if you are a jack of all, you are really valued much higher than what you were valued earlier.
So Realm 3, somebody has mentioned, sir, how to get into industry. So how to get into industry, like if you know if you have learned any software or if you know what Samir sir is talking about, so you can produce one showreel and show it to the studios. They will select your skill sets based on your showreel actually. Or if you don't know anything, you have to first learn actually, select the good institute. We are one among them. So you can come and join the course here. So Abdul Bashid, sir, what was the hardest project up till now you have done?
No, man, it's a Bashir. I must say that every new project is always the hardest, man.
Yeah.
Every time I keep biting my nails whenever I see the kind of complication that is required. So every project has been hardest, at least in the real whatever you saw now. Replacing the heads for all the characters in the movie was really difficult, and that was challenging as well. The challenges always keeps, it's more like milestone. You meet a challenge, then comes another challenge. You meet the next challenge, then another challenge comes up. So that is always a milestone, and it needs to always be, renewed and changed every given point of time. But at least the last recent project has been the challenging one.
So that's what whenever I do sessions, I used to always tell them. So I'm always satisfied I'm in the field where I don't have to repeat my job. Whereas if you're a software engineer, it is a coding. Even if you put one comma, if you forget to put one comma, it will not work. You have to put the same thing. Whereas me and Samir, it's been 30 years. We have never repeated the same kind of a job in this 30 years, actually. Every day, every shot is a challenging shot. Correct, Samir?
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah. Uh, so how much salary can we expect for a FX artist and Houdini artist? You directly wants to know the salary.
Okay. See, yeah. So Houdini artist and FX artist is not really a entry level job, right?
Correct.
In the industry, there are some things called as the entry level job. Then you move progress. Like
Progress.
compositor is not an entry level job. You'll have to be a roto artist or you'll have to be a prep artist before you become a compositor. So again, at least the industry standards that we have now for an FX artist is really a lump sum that you can get. And again, provided do you have it in you is very important, right? It's not that just because there is never an accreditation to the skill. You can call yourself as a FX artist, but then if you're validated as a FX artist by the organization that really wants to engage on your work, and if they feel like nobody else can do as much as what you are doing, then you are always highly paid, irrespective of what you are.
Just to answer your question, just to answer your question, a couple of days before I had a call with the Red Chillies production head. They are currently in demand of a lot of Houdini artists. They were asking if any of our students are there, where if they know a little bit of skills also, they are ready to hire, because they are expecting some huge projects actually where they require Houdini artists. Like Zamir said, if today bot has a person who is already working on Houdini and he is able to deliver some of the stunning shots, if you can replace what he is doing, so you'll get the same kind of salary because the need is there. It depends on what is in you, actually, how much you can deliver. And Abdul Bashid again, sir, some pro.
It's become more capitalistic now. Earlier, it was like equal amount of salary for everyone. There were large amount of people working, but now it is small amount of people working and the higher salary if you are very skilled enough.
Correct. Is environment artist has scope in India? Vasant Anbu.
That's a very rare skill that you can get in India. Environment artist is a very highly regarded skill set, and you can hardly name them, whoever is in India, handful of people. So environment artist is highly valued.
So it's when you say, because there are two different things. One is the digital set actually. Another one is the greenery aspects, the nature kind of it. So that is more of a matte painting, mixed of matte painting and giving it as a complete on the whole kind. So you are talking about the set extension people or the whole?
No, environment artist is not set extension. So environment artists are the people who are like a bridge between the 2D and the 3D world. Okay, you can call them as DMP artists as well.
Correct.
Now, many times matte painters always be Photoshop driven, only correct. Photoshop. But environment artist is a person who is an expert in 3D and who is able to get many things with just projection on the 3D
projection mapping,
environment, and then build whatever that is really required. You can build, you can create a forest, you can build the trees, you can build a pond. He is able to do everything together. So that is an environment artist, and that
so basically they do this at a larger scale level. They do it in Houdini or Cinema 4D. Or in Nuke itself, layer compositing using the 3D camera, or
there are many tools. There is something called View 3D.
Yeah, View 3D. Yes.
Yeah, View 3D is a good environment tool, and there are other what do you say? See, now we are getting into the age of plugins. Earlier, you were like, for example, in earlier days, you were making a tree in Maya, making the branches, making leaves. But now you have a tool called SpeedTree. You have about, say, tons and tons of tree. You just drag drop.
Correct.
So what is really now important is whether are you creative. Technical expertise is less. Creative is more.
Yeah, now this Unreal has brought in those libraries actually. So
that's
even
correct.
If you want a rock, if you want water, everything is ready-made available. Plug and play. Correct. It's just the question of how you are assembling artistically, and you need to understand the scaling, proportion, perspective, all these aspects. These are very important.
Yeah, this will clearly tell you that if you're more slanted to the artistic side of your skills, then you are even more valued, because you know exactly what is correct and what is wrong. the tools have come a lot now. It's all like ready-made tools now.
Correct.
Whether are you able to present it, are you able to make a good picture out of it is more important.
Yeah. So Vasant Babu sir, what do you think about Unreal Engine growing? So we just explained about it. So that is growing tremendously. Unreal Engine. There are a lot of ready-made assets are available there. It's just the question of, as an artist, how you are utilizing those assets, and that you are able to actually convey uh, good backgrounds or whatever required for the directors.
That is true. A tool is always a tool,
Yeah.
Abhishek. You can screw and unscrew using a screwdriver, or even you can scratch your back with a screwdriver.
Yeah.
How are you using it matters.
Yeah. So drawing skills is must for VFX artist. So in his presentation itself, he has clearly told. So you don't consider it as like, I don't want this, I don't want this. It depends on where do you want to see yourself actually. If drawing skills are necessary to become a great visual effects supervisor down the line after 10 years, then you must start and you must develop that skills. If you ask yourself, drawing skills are must, I don't want to do that, then you are restricting yourself. You can still get a job in the industry, but it's whether you're growing or not that matters a lot.
That's correct.
Yeah. Tanushree, sir, how many people are required to produce an animation movie? Actually, again, it's an hypothetical question. It depends on like what is the kind of a project scale and how many episodes to be delivered. If you are working for a television show, how many episodes per month to be delivered? Like for example, 40 people put together delivering one episode. Sometimes channel will come to you and say monthly we need 5 episodes. So 40 into 5. So it depends on the project scale and the project's deadline actually. So that,
Yeah. I remember while I was working with Rango, Rango had a very small team, but they were able to do a great job, which even won the Oscars.
correct.
So yeah, when you say as much as what you emphasize on how many people required, it is also like how much time is required. Rango had a huge time to really develop. Execution was very short. So if you have more time, you need lesser amount of people. If you have less time, you need more amount of people.
An artist, does industry hire us, or we wanted to apply in it actually? Abdul,
Yeah.
Abdul Bashir, yeah.
Yeah, good. So of course, you for a first job you will have to apply. For the first and second jobs, probably you might have to apply. The minute you get into the third level, people will know you in the industry.
But just to answer Abdul, so there are a lot of things nowadays. It's unlike like when we started our career. Today there are plenty of online forums are there where you can actually post. So like CG Tantra, then Art Behance is there, then Art Torrent, like these kind of many sites are there where you keep putting your work there, whether it may be a 3D look development or whatever it is. People used to hire by looking at your work. You don't really have to apply also. There are people who have got job just with that forums actually. They'll write to you. That's another way also to look at it. What are the render engines is used in the industry, sir? Vasant Anbu.
When there are many, like Redshift is one engine. Then you have the usual ones like V-Ray.
V-Rays, yeah.
You have Arnold. So these are like common ones, is what I would say. But if you're into the advertising industry, you would prefer V-Rays, and if you're into the VFX industry, you would generally prefer Arnold. But if you are into effects, and if you want to get things done faster and make use of the GPU rendering, then probably you might use Redshift. It depends on the need, but there are plenty of options.
Yeah, but just to answer your question, so when you see the output, you will never be able to figure out whether it is done using V-Ray or RefSheet or something. So ultimately, you have to be an artist to deliver that. You're using all these tools and plugins to deliver the final outcome. So you need to be an artist, and you should have the like eye for detailing. So only then these softwares are also you can quickly learn actually. But if you don't have that eye for detailing, that artistic knowledge, whatever software if we give, you will not be able to produce. Yogesh Panchar, sir, what are the growing steps for VFX artists and how much can earn in VFX actually? So there are many people interested in salary only, I think.
Yeah. No, it's valid point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the again, your first job salary will always be, you know, pretty minimal, which is in line with any first jobs. But I think once you've spent about say 3 to 4 years in the industry, then it would start rising exponentially. So it'll be like this at the start, then again it will start going up like this.
Correct. Ashish again, Zamir sir, according to you, at what place will you rank the Blender 3D software in the industry? Your view on Blender 3D, and is there jobs in Blender 3D as it is open source software?
You see, Blender 3D, yes, there are jobs, but then for now, the usage of Blender has mostly been in the motion graphics industry, or more on the television side of the industry. Though Blender is definitely a great software, I do accept, but I think still I think Maya rules the 3D side of it. Maya, Houdini rules, and Blender and the Max is now pushed to either architectural or either to the television-based industry. But Blender is good, and with the new Octane render engine and everything that it is coming up with, things have been promising. But still, it is more isolated to indie projects. It is more isolated to television at this point of time. But in no time, I think it will come to the mainstream, and I really have much confidence on that.
Okay. So somebody, JV, sir, I am a new to this VFX. Can you suggest how to start learning? I prefer self-study. Your inputs, please. There are plenty of options are there. You can enroll in many sites. Skillshare.com is there. Then there are many edutech softwares are there. If you want to self-learn, you can subscribe and you can learn. But always I prefer, it is good to have some mentor who can guide you actually while you are doing the mistake. The actual training happens while you are working on something. If somebody comes and tell you the corrections, even in the industry also, that's how it works. So Samir sir's job would be, if people, there may be 200 people working on the floor, but his job is to go and look at that. They are all experienced people. Go and look at their work and give them some certain corrections and tell them this is where you have done a mistake, and then correct it. So that part will not be happening when you are doing self-learning actually, because that is when you require good mentors. You require to choose some good institutes who you can learn and all those things. Correct me if I'm wrong, Zamir.
No, you're absolutely right, because a feedback mechanism is very important, right? Then how will you know that what you've learned is correct or not?
Correct. Sir, just wanted to ask, while you were making the X-Men VFX project, how many days did you invest actually? Abdul Bashir.
Okay. See, X-Men, I was just doing, I think that I was doing that while I was in the other studio in MPC. So we were only doing three or four sequence of that movie. So it was not the entire movie. We were on that time we were only doing about 3 or 4 sequences. So it just took us about I would say 3 to 4 months at max. 3 months.
Sir, how do you decide when to rely on VFX and when to rely on SFX in movies? So SFX, basically the term SFX is not related to VFX. SFX is special effects. There is a team like Stunt Master in the industry. There is a SFX team is there where they do a dummy blast. When you shoot, actually they'll put a small device in your body and then they blast blood. All that called as SFX actually. I think there's keep on questions are going on, but more relevant. How many years? How many years of experience do you really need to get into Disney, Marvel? First, you'll have to start. You first have to get into first step. Then you talk about Disney, Marvel, and all. Most of the questions, I think Samir sir's presentation has actually given you all the explanation. My question: after graduation, during the time of full-time recruitment, which is considered to be an advantage, having quality portfolio made alone or having a portfolio made while working as an intern? Does that mean having internship hours matters?
No, I actually say it's both actually. So you even when the studios select you as an intern, they need to have a showreel.
Sure.
But at least there has not been a huge benchmarking. So many a times whenever there is group projects, we have to think, sometimes because sometimes in the industry, I mean, very few people, very few people play out where in a group project they claim that they have done everything, but you get the resume and then you get another resume who says he's done everything and not everybody else has done. So we'll have to have a clearing up of who's really done. So I would suggest a group project is good, and also have an individual project before you get an entry for the internship. And on the internship, it is not about the reel; it's about how you really perform there.
Performance.
The minute you've got an internship, people will always keep an eye on you, and the way that you're working, the kind of learner you are you able to grasp things faster? These are more than enough for them to.
Your attitude matters a lot during
Exactly.
the internship, actually.
I was trying to be diplomatic, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so see, like what he said, demo reel first qualifies whether you are capable enough to get into the internship, actually. So you need to work on the demo reel. That's very, very important, actually. So whether it is individual demo reel, or even if it is a group project we are doing, like for example, one particular shot as a team of 5-member team, you can create one sequence shot where you can be like your contribution can be of a set extension, other guy can be a contribution of compositing, some of them are roto paint. You can actually put these are my skill sets which I have done it in that, but that shot needs to be as good as the real film output type. So that attracts the employers and they will call you for the next stage, that is the studio test, actually. Because even though when you are submitting your demo reel, probably they might not directly hire you, so they will ask you to perform a test, actually. So the test why they are giving, it's not about whether you're capable enough to do it or not. Maybe during while you are studying that particular shot, you might have taken 5 or 6 days to complete, but in the test you need to perform within 6 hours or maybe 3 hours, actually. So only then you qualify there. That's why they're giving that test, actually. Once if you do that, then there you are in. Then the third stage is the internship stage, where they observe, because you are already qualified, you have the skill sets. The third stage, which look at it, how do you perform, whether you are committed, actually. So whether you are able to work as a team, whether your attitude is good, and so these are the things which they look at. This determines your complete employment, actually.
I see another question that keeps repeating,
Yeah.
which is like, what do you do to remain up to date with the industry technology? Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the question is, what do I do to remain up to date with industry technology and software? This is very crucial because, as I told you, the, I mean, I just tell this in a low slang to my people. Like, when you're at level 1, you'll only be able to see a smaller distance.
Correct.
When you're at level 2, probably like if you're on the second floor, you'll be able to see the nearby street.
Yeah.
And if you're at say fourth floor, you'll be able to see 4 or 5 streets. If you're at the 10th floor, probably you can even see the edge of the city. So the more you go up, you need to have a better forecasting. You need to have a better forecasting of the trend in terms of the process, methodology of working. And also you need to have a up-to-date information of what is the software that is coming up. And for these to really happen, there are umpteen forums that is available. So the first thing to remain update with the technology and software is that you do a lot of knowledge sharing. Whatever I'm doing to you now is a knowledge sharing that I'm doing. So the more you share the knowledge, you become an expert in whatever that you're doing at. And then there are a lot of forums at which you can have a conversation to get better ideas. And there are a lot of events and conferences that plays out in every part of the world. You have conferences like SIGGRAPH, you have conferences like View. There are many conferences. So I do participate. In some conferences I do present papers. In some I do participate and get a hang of what is really going on. And these conferences will always have white papers that is being presented in terms of technology. Like for example, uh, there would be a white paper presented on how to capture a light. So you take that as a reference, and with your software team, try to build up or at least get the idea and see how you can recreate that into your structure. So attending these conferences, being a part in a lot of industry forums, and knowledge sharing at many forums really makes you be on top of what is really required. And again, I read a lot, so I think reading also gives a good insight into what is coming ahead.
Great. Probably we'll end up with this last question. Samir sir, who is your inspiration in the VFX industry?
I mean, there is nothing, you see, there is nothing like inspiration. So, yeah, I mean, in some of the inspirations for me has always come from the people whom I've seen like magicians. the peer group that I've seen, I know a person who can execute the shot like in a flight, which even I will not be able to do that. So the inspiration comes from various different mediums. Like, the minute you see a person who is doing a great job, much better than what you are able to do, is an inspiration. And I've always seen the new crowd coming out with that kind of knowledge. I think recently, 2 3 days back, I was sitting on an interview to hire one of the person to our team, and I was so much impressed and what do you say, inspired by the way he's really composed himself, and he's really put in a lot of foundation for his knowledge. So inspiration is always it is not from one person. At least for me, it has not been from one person. I've seen that sparks from many people, and I've been always like a they call in Tamil, they call that as Anna Paravai, a person who always takes the best of everybody.
For that things, I would like to quote Instagram as one of the biggest inspiration. These small videos, that VFX which they are doing actually. So sometimes you cannot even believe it. So realistic they are doing. But there are plenty of Instagram videos coming from China. Those are all VFX, but many layman people thinks that this is the real video which they have taken actually.
Yeah.
They are utilizing it like that.
No, the main thing is about that more than the inspiration. Of course, you might have some heroes that you need to work with. At least when I joined ILM, I was able to rub my shoulders with people whom I thought were like were like
Legends.
demigods.
Yeah.
Like like John Knoll. John Knoll was one good example. The person who even invented Photoshop. So I had worked with him for at least 3 or 4 shows. And he's a supervisor who does not see all the details. As long as it looks good, it tells the story, it is fine.
Yeah.
So that is something that you would learn from them. And I worked with other supervisors like Ben Snow from in ILM when I was working for Transformers and Iron Man. So he's a person who always looks into detail what is really required. So the inspiring person has not been one, has always been many people, and it always keeps evolving over a period of time too.
Thank you. I think it is quite a long session. Thank you so much, Zamir. It has been pleasure talking to you even after very, very long years, actually. Though we are in industry, but we don't get time to discuss like this. But I'm really happy at least we had a good chat. And I'm sure those who have attended today have also got a tremendous insight about this industry. And we keep inspiring like this the younger generation, because the industry requires people, young, energetic, and good artistic people actually. We'll do that. Thank you so much once again, Zamir. Thanks a lot.
I'm no longer young, Satish. Grace, tell you I'm not young.
No, we are still young. By heart, we are still young. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye.